They built 96 houses on my land, not by mistake and on purpose. For 3 years I stayed away, and when I finally came back, I found paved streets where pine trees used to stand, kids playing where elk used to roam, and a "Welcome to Ridgeline Meadows" sign standing right where my grandfather's cabin used to be. I told the woman behind it all that she built everything on my property. She smiled and said, "If that were true, honey, I'd be the one trespassing." Then she turned her back on me. But what she didn't know was I had every receipt, every document, and every reason to let her keep building. Because I wasn't going to stop her. I was going to wait until she finished, and then take it all back. Tomato Tales presents Real Stories with a Twist. My name's Dale Harker. I'm 47 years old. Structural engineer, divorced, nothing special. Except for one thing. I own 47 acres of Colorado forest that my grandfather left me. He bought it in 1971, $8,200 in cash. No loans, no banks, just grit and paper. When he passed away, he left the land to me with a single handwritten note. Don't let them take what's yours. For years, I didn't visit. Work-life bills, you know how it goes. But I paid the property taxes every single April. $6,400 on time. Then one summer morning, I decided to drive up and finally scatter his ashes. That's when I saw it. The forest was gone. In its place, a full neighborhood. Ridgeline Meadows. Rows of tan houses, asphalt roads, and a decorative fountain right in the middle of what used to be my grandfather's garden. At the gated entrance, a security guard stopped me. "Residents only." "I am the resident," I told him. "I own this land," he smirked. "Yeah, sure you do." Before I could say anything else, a white Range Rover rolled up. Out stepped Cassandra Whitfield, the developer. Mid-50s, crisp linen, sunglasses worth more than my truck. "Problem, Ray?" she asked the guard. "This guy says he owns the land," he replied. She turned to me, her smile sweet but cold. "Oh, sweetheart," she said. "If you're looking for construction work, we're already full." "I'm not looking for work," I said. "My grandfather left me this land." Her smile twitched. "That's cute. But our title company confirmed this land was abandoned. We acquired it legally under Colorado's adverse possession law." I took a breath. "Doesn't count if the property taxes were paid." Her expression froze just for a second. Then she snapped a photo of my license plate and said, "You know just enough to be dangerous." "Don't make a mess you can't clean up." I said nothing. I drove home. But that night, I laid every record my grandfather kept across my kitchen table. The deed, the maps, the receipts. Proof that she'd made the worst mistake of her life. She thought I was bluffing. She had no idea who she was dealing with. I didn't confront her again, not yet. Instead, I watched. I waited. I let her build. Because once those houses sold, every contract she signed would become my weapon. You'll see what happened when her own lawyer accidentally helped me take everything back. This is Tomato Tales. Real stories with a twist. Subscribe now so you don't. When I first called the number on Cassandra Whitfield's business card, I expected arrogance. What I didn't expect was hesitation. "Brandon Keir, Whitfield Legal Associates," the voice said. Calm, polished, confident. "Mr. Keir," I said. "You're representing Ridgeline Meadows, right?" A pause, then. "That's correct. How can I help you?" I told him who I was, the rightful owner of the land his client was building on. Another pause. Longer this time. Finally, he said, "Mr. Harker, I can't discuss that over the phone." Click. That was the moment I realized something important. He knew. He already knew Cassandra had built on land that wasn't legally hers. So I hired my own attorney, Daniel Rowe, a small-town lawyer who charged by the hour and hated big developers. When I handed him my grandfather's deed, he whistled low. "Well, Dale," he said, "she's in trouble." "Big trouble." Rowe explained it clearly. My grandfather's deed was still valid, taxes were current, and there was no record of any sale or transfer. The land had never changed hands. In other words, every single home she built sat on stolen property. But instead of rushing to court, Roe gave me advice I didn't expect. "Wait," he said. "Let them finish the project. Let them pour more money into it. Every dollar they spend will be leverage when we file." That's when I started documenting everything. Photos, dates, drone footage. Even the building permits they filed with the county clerk's office, all under the wrong property ID. Then 3 months later, I got a call. It was Brandon Keir, the developer's lawyer. "Mr. Harker," he said, "I'd like to meet in person, off the record." We met at a coffee shop off I-25. He arrived early, tie loose, eyes tired. He looked less like a shark and more like a man in trouble. "Before we start," he said, "I'm not admitting fault." "Didn't ask you to," I replied. He sighed. "Cassandra didn't tell me the full story when she bought that land. She lied about the tax records, lied about prior ownership." He rubbed his temples. "I told her we needed a quiet settlement. She refused." I leaned back, watching him twist. "So what do you want from me?" I asked. He hesitated, then slid a folder across the table. Inside, copies of internal memos between Cassandra and the city's zoning board. Emails where she knowingly forged property details to rush construction approval. It was everything I needed, handed to me by her own lawyer. Before he left, Brandon said something that stuck with me. "She's got investors lined up to buy the remaining lots. If you don't stop her now, she'll drag you into bankruptcy before you ever win in court." I smiled. "Oh, I'm not stopping her," I said. "I'm just getting started, because in the next move, I wasn't going to fight Cassandra in court. I was going to let her lawyer, her investors, and the entire county do it for me." After that meeting with Brandon Keir, Cassandra's own lawyer, I realized something. She wasn't just reckless, she was desperate. That folder he gave me, it was a gold mine. Emails, fake tax declarations, property forms signed with a forged county seal. Evidence that she knew she didn't own the land, and built anyway. But Roe, my lawyer, told me not to rush. "Don't go to the county yet," he said. "We'll use this the right way." So we crafted something better than a lawsuit. We wrote a single letter. Not to Cassandra, not to the city, but to her investors. It was short, polite, and devastating. "Dear Mr. Weller, we are writing to inform you that the Ridgeline Meadows property development currently occupies privately owned land under an active title belonging to the Harker family estate. All construction, marketing, and financial activity associated with this property may be in violation of state and federal law. We advise immediate review of your investment agreements before further funds are disbursed." We sent copies to all 10 of her investors, and one to the county clerk, just in case. Then we waited. The first call came within 24 hours. A man named Victor Lang, one of her main financial backers. His voice was cold and shaking. "You're saying this whole project's on stolen land?" "Yes," I said. "And I can prove it," he didn't argue. He just hung up. By the end of the week, 3 investors had frozen their funding. Construction slowed. And then came the best part. The city zoning department called me. "Mr. Harker," they said, "we've received conflicting ownership claims. We'll need to review all permits issued to Ridgeline Meadows." That one call triggered an investigation. And once the county realized the permits were filed under a fake parcel ID, they suspended every single building approval. Cassandra tried to fix it, stormed into the zoning office, yelling that her team would handle it internally. But it was too late. Every department wanted documentation, and every missing signature traced right back to her. Then one afternoon, I drove past the site. The once busy construction crews were gone. Half-finished houses stood silent under gray skies. And for the first time, the Whitfield development banner had been ripped down. I parked at a distance, rolled down my window, and watched as Cassandra herself stood in the mud. Phone pressed to her ear, screaming. I couldn't hear what she said, but I didn't have to, because the next day I got a letter too. It wasn't from her. It was from the bank. The same bank that financed her project had just declared her entire development in default. And when the foreclosure notice hit her desk, it carried my name on the ownership line. When the foreclosure notice arrived, I read it 3 times. Not because I didn't believe it, but because I wanted to savor every word. Notice of default. The undersigned First Frontier Bank hereby claims foreclosure on the property known as Ridgeline Meadows. Ownership title pending verification. Ownership title pending verification. Those 4 words meant one thing, me. I called my lawyer, Roe. He answered before the first ring ended. You saw it? He said. I saw it. He chuckled. That quiet, satisfied laugh only lawyers make when the law finally lands in their favor. This is where it gets good, he said. But don't celebrate yet. She's going to fight dirty. And Roe was right. The next day, Cassandra's company filed an emergency injunction, claiming the foreclosure was fraudulent. But the bank's lawyers refused to back down. They wanted proof of ownership before funding another cent. That's when Cassandra finally snapped. She called me. The voice that once dripped with confidence now sounded brittle. Dale, this is Cassandra Whitfield. We need to talk. I'm listening, I said. I don't know what kind of game you're playing, but you're ruining lives here. Families are moving in. People have mortgages. On my land, I replied. A long silence. Then, look, maybe we can come to an arrangement. I'll buy you out. Fair market value. I smiled into the phone. Cassandra, you already bought it. You just didn't pay the right person. She hung up. Within a week, her construction company laid off 40 workers. Her investors started pulling out one by one. And by month's end, the county had frozen her developer's license pending investigation. It wasn't enough to destroy her. Not yet. Because even as her empire crumbled, she was still scheming. Roe told me, she's trying to flip the remaining lots to a holding company. Fake sale to move the debt. How much time do we have? I asked. Not long, maybe 2 weeks before she hides everything under new paperwork. That's when we decided to spring the trap. Roe filed a temporary ownership injunction in federal court, using the very foreclosure notice as evidence. It forced the bank to hold every property transaction until the true owner was confirmed. And that owner was me. When the judge stamped that order, everything stopped. No more sales, no more transfers, no more lies. Cassandra had built 96 homes and couldn't sell a single one. Her empire was frozen in place, sitting on stolen dirt she couldn't touch, and yet I knew she wasn't done. The kind of person she was, she'd rather burn the whole neighborhood down than admit defeat. I thought the worst was over. But the night after that court order, someone broke into my house. The first thing that woke me wasn't the sound. It was the silence. My dog, Jasper, normally barked at every noise outside. That night, nothing. Just the faint hum of the fridge and the steady tick of the kitchen clock. Then the back door creaked. I reached for the flashlight I kept under the nightstand. No power, someone had cut the breaker. For a second, I thought I was dreaming, until I heard footsteps on the tile. Heavy. Careful. I grabbed the baseball bat from the closet and crept toward the hallway. Moonlight from the window cut across the floor, just enough to see a shadow move past the dining table. My heart was hammering, but my mind was calm. Whoever was inside didn't know I was awake. When the intruder passed the kitchen island, I stepped forward and swung the bat down hard against the counter. The sound shattered the quiet. The shadow froze, then a voice, low, familiar. "Dale, put the bat down." It was Brandon Keir, Cassandra's lawyer. "What the hell are you doing in my house?" I shouted. He raised his hands. "I tried calling. Cassandra's losing it. She blames me for everything. She thinks you're feeding evidence to the state." I kept the bat tight in my grip. "You broke into my house to warn me?" He nodded, eyes darting toward the window. "She hired someone, a fixer, the kind of guy who doesn't use business cards. He's looking for that file I gave you." I felt the cold crawl up my spine. "You mean the emails, the zoning forgeries?" He nodded. "She wants them gone before the state audit hits next week. If she erases those, she walks." I stared at him for a long moment. "And you think coming here helps me how?" "Because," he said, "I'm done working for her. I want protection. In exchange, I'll testify." I didn't answer right away. Brandon looked genuinely scared. The kind of fear that only comes from realizing the devil you worked for is turning on you. I finally lowered the bat. "Fine, tomorrow morning we go to Roe. You tell him everything under oath." He nodded fast. "You'll need to move those documents somewhere safe tonight. If she sends that guy, he won't knock." Then he left. The same way he came, through the back door, disappearing. I stood there for a while, the house still and silent again. Somewhere outside, a car engine started, then faded down the road. I didn't sleep after that. I packed every file, deeds, maps, printed emails, into a locked case and drove them to my brother's farm 2 towns over before sunrise. By the time I came home, the sheriff's cruiser was parked in my driveway. The officer stepped out, shining a flashlight across the yard. "You Dale Harker?" "Yeah." He pointed to the porch. "Sir, you might want to see this." There, nailed to the front door, was a single sheet of paper, typed in bold letters, "Drop the case or we drop you." That's when I realized this wasn't about land anymore. It was about survival. And the next move I made would decide who lost everything first. The note on my door stayed burned in my mind all night. "Drop the case or we drop you." I'd seen plenty of threats in movies, never one with my name on it. By sunrise, I was at Roe's office, the briefcase of documents still locked tight in my hands. He looked up when I walked in. "You look like you haven't slept." "Someone broke into my house," I said flatly, "and left this." I handed him the note. He read it once, then again, jaw tightening. "This isn't Cassandra anymore," he said. "She's bringing in outsiders. Her lawyer told me she hired a fixer." Roe leaned back. "If that's true, he's not here to scare you. He's here to clean up her mess." I dropped into the chair across from him. "So what do we do?" He sighed. "We make her think she's already won." Before I could ask, he picked up the phone and called the county clerk's office. "Hi, this is Daniel Roe. I need to confirm a withdrawal of the Harker claim on parcel 118C. Yes, Ridgeline Meadows." I sat up straight. "You're withdrawing our claim?" He covered the phone. "No, I'm just making them believe we are." When he hung up, he said, "If Cassandra thinks you've backed off, she'll relax her guard. That's when she'll slip." I wasn't sure if I trusted the plan, but I didn't have a better one. That afternoon I left town, drove 2 hours south to my brother's farm where I'd stashed the files. He met me at the gate, wiping his hands on an old rag. "You really stirred up a hornet's nest," he said. "I just want what's mine." "Well, then you better start watching your back." That night, as the crickets sang outside and the air cooled, I sat on the porch scrolling through my phone. A message popped up from an unknown number. "Nice farm. Shame if something happened to it." My heart dropped. I ran outside, scanning the tree line. At first, nothing. Then I caught a flicker of light, headlights, way out on the road. A black SUV idling, engine running, No plates visible. I stepped off the porch, phone in hand, snapping a picture. The SUV's lights blinked twice, then it pulled away into the dark. I called Roe immediately. "They found the farm," I said. He was silent for a moment. Then, "Pack the documents. Get to my office first thing tomorrow. I'll have protection arranged." I barely slept. Every sound outside made me reach for the bat beside the bed. At dawn, I loaded everything into the truck and hit the highway. Halfway there, my phone buzzed again. Same unknown number. "Too late, Dale." Then a photo, my house, burning. I pulled over on the shoulder, hands shaking, watching smoke rise on the horizon in the direction of my home. That's when I realized this was no longer about property lines or deeds. It was war. This is Tomato Tales. Real stories with a twist. Subscribe now. When I reached what was left of my house, the flames were already dying. A single wall stood, charred black, smoke curling off the roof beams like ghosts. 2 fire trucks, 1 sheriff's car. The smell of everything I owned turning to ash. The deputy met me at the curb. "You Harker?" I nodded, throat dry. Fire started around 4 a.m. Gasoline residue near the back door. Someone wanted this place gone. "Anyone hurt?" He shook his head. "You were lucky you weren't home." Lucky. That word felt wrong. Inside the rubble, they found something the fire couldn't destroy. My grandfather's safe, half melted but still sealed. The next morning at Roe's office, we pried it open with a crowbar. Inside were charred papers, old tax receipts, letters, and 1 small metal box that somehow survived untouched. When I flipped the latch, I froze. It wasn't full of money. It was full of photographs, aerial survey photos dated decades ago, showing the forest before any development, and stapled to the back of each print, official county stamps and boundary markers. Roe stared at them like he was seeing gold. "Dale," he said slowly, "these aren't just pictures. They're property verification records, original ones, pre-digital era. The county lost most of these in the 1990 flood." My pulse kicked up. "Meaning?" "Meaning," he said. "Cassandra can't forge what doesn't exist anywhere else. These prove the legal boundaries, yours. Every inch. The fire wasn't random, it was a cleanup job. But the one thing she wanted gone had just survived." That same afternoon, we met with the sheriff to file an official report. When he saw the photos, his eyebrows rose. "I've got a friend in zoning who's been trying to track missing boundary files for months. If these are authentic, you just broke her case wide open." By evening, word spread fast. The county reopened the Ridgeline investigation. Construction halted permanently. Cassandra's company was under review for fraudulent land acquisition, but the woman herself, nowhere to be found. Her office emptied out overnight. Phone numbers disconnected. Investors vanished. Roe leaned back in his chair, eyes narrow. "She's running." I stared at the photographs spread across his desk. "No," I said quietly. "She's planning her next move." Because Cassandra Whitfield wasn't the kind of person who disappeared in fear. She disappeared in preparation. And 2 days later, my suspicion proved right. When a mysterious envelope arrived at my lawyer's office with no return address, and Cassandra's initials stamped in red wax. Roe called just after noon. "Dale, you'd better get down here." When I arrived, the letter was sitting in the middle of his desk, thick parchment sealed with dark red wax. The imprint, CW. He slid it toward me carefully. It came by courier, no sender name, no return address. I broke the seal. Inside was a single page, written in elegant cursive that somehow managed to look both calm and threatening. "Congratulations, Mr. Harker. You've proven yourself smarter than most, but you've also uncovered more than you understand. Ridgeline Meadows wasn't my idea. I was just the front you could see. If you value what's left of your life, walk away before they decide you're a problem. See. I looked up at Ro. She's bluffing, he said at first, but his voice lacked conviction. I shook my head. No, this isn't a threat. It's a warning. Ro leaned forward. You think she's scared? Not of me, I said. Of whoever's behind her. We spent the next 2 hours digging through every company tied to Whitfield Development. Half didn't exist. The others traced to shell corporations with offshore addresses, all leading to one name neither of us recognized. Apex Resource Group. Ro frowned. They've been buying land all over the state. Mining rights, water access, the works. Why would they need a housing project, I asked. He exhaled. Maybe because what's under your land isn't just dirt. That night I couldn't shake the thought. I drove out to what used to be my property. Now an empty construction site frozen in silence. The wind cut through the half-built frames, whistling between the wooden beams like ghosts whispering secrets. Near the southern fence line, I saw something strange, a small metal post sticking out of the ground with fresh markings. Not from housing construction, from surveying equipment. The tag read, Apex Drilling Division. My flashlight trembled in my hand. This wasn't about real estate anymore. It was about whatever they were planning to pull from underneath it. As I turned back toward my truck, headlights flashed once in the distance, then vanished. Someone was still watching. I thought I'd been fighting a corrupt developer, but now I knew I'd stumbled into something far bigger and far more dangerous. I didn't sleep that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw that survey stake, Apex Drilling Division, standing where my grandfather's cabin used to be. By morning, I was back in Ro's office with coffee that tasted like mud and nerves. He was already on the phone. Yeah, he said. Run the registry for Apex Resource Group again. Anything with environmental exemptions, water permits, or mineral rights. He hung up and looked at me. They're registered under multiple subsidiaries, oil, gas, rare minerals. They've been quietly acquiring land that sits on old geological fault lines. Fault lines? I repeated. Fractures that can hold natural gas pockets or something else. I remembered the night I found my grandfather's safe. The smell of the soil, the way he used to warn me never to dig near the southern edge. Ro saw the look on my face. What? My grandfather, I said. He told me once there was an old military survey here in the 1950s. He said they'd found something underground, something they sealed off. We drove out that afternoon to the property. The site was quiet, dust blowing through skeletal beams of half-built homes. At the southern boundary, we found the apex markers again. Fresh ones this time, deeper in the ground. I crouched down and brushed the dirt away. The metal post was warm. Humming faintly, Ro frowned. That's not a soil sensor. We followed the line of stakes until it led to a padlocked gate surrounded by fresh gravel and tire tracks. Beyond it, a steel hatch protruded from the ground, brand new, marked with the Apex logo. This wasn't here before, I said. Ro shook his head. They've been drilling underneath you this whole time. I kicked at the gravel and saw a glint of metal, a data tag partially buried. I wiped it clean. Property of the U.S. Geological Survey. Restricted access 1974. The air felt heavier. What the hell did my grandfather protect? I whispered. Ro exhaled. Whatever it is, Apex already knows. And if Cassandra was working for them, she's not running. She's hiding. I stared at the hatch, the hum vibrating through my boots. Maybe this was why she'd built Ridgeline Meadows so fast, to cover up what was below before anyone asked questions. Then I saw it, a new set of tire tracks in the dirt. 3 vehicles. heading straight from that hatch toward the highway. Whoever Apex sent to finish this job was already moving, and if I didn't find out what they'd uncovered, my grandfather's secret would die with me. By the next morning, I'd made up my mind. I wasn't waiting for another threat, another fire, or another warning. If Apex was hiding something under my land, I was going to see it myself. Roe tried to talk me out of it. Dale, this isn't about a lawsuit anymore. If what's down there's federal, we're crossing a line. I zipped my jacket and looked at him. That line was crossed when they burned my house. I drove back to Ridgeline Meadows before sunrise. Fugue rolled off the hills, wrapping the empty neighborhood in pale mist. The roads were silent, the half-built homes like skeletons of a lie. At the southern fence line, I parked behind a mound of gravel and crept toward the hatch we'd found the day before. The Apex logo gleamed in the dim light. A keypad lock blinked red. I took a deep breath and pulled out the universal contractor key I'd stolen from one of Cassandra's old site trucks weeks earlier. To my surprise, it fit. The lock released with a click that echoed in the stillness. A steel ladder led straight down into darkness. The air was colder the deeper I went, the hum louder, like machinery buried in the earth. At the bottom, the tunnel opened into a wide chamber lit by flickering fluorescent tubes, pipes, tanks, cables running along the walls, and in the center, a cylindrical vault covered in hazard labels and a government stamp so faded it was almost unreadable. U.S. Geological Survey, Experimental Containment Site, 1974. I stepped closer. Through a small viewing window, I saw what looked like shimmering liquid metal swirling inside. Not oil, not gas. Something denser, alive, almost magnetic. My phone buzzed in my pocket, breaking the silence. A text from an unknown number. Walk away, Dale. You don't know what that is. My chest tightened. I turned, flashlight sweeping the tunnel, and froze. A man stood at the far end. Dark coat, clean shoes, no expression. He didn't speak, just raised a small black device and pressed a button. A deafening alarm blared through the chamber. Red lights flashed. The metal vault began to hiss, releasing a low rumble that made the ground tremble beneath my feet. I ran for the ladder, grabbing the rungs two at a time. Behind me, steam poured. From the vault, filling the air with the smell of hot iron and ozone. When I climbed out and slammed the hatch shut, the hum below had changed, deeper, angrier. I stumbled back to my truck, heart pounding. As I drove away, I saw men in black vans rolling toward the site. No markings, no headlights, and in the rearview mirror, a plume of gray mist rising where the hatch used to be. That night I finally understood why my grandfather wrote those words. Don't let them take what's yours. Because what was buried under Ridgeline Meadows wasn't just land. It was power, and now it was waking up. I didn't tell Roe what I'd seen under the ridge. Not yet. Some truths sound insane until they're undeniable. And whatever was in that vault was alive. Not in the way a living thing breathes, but in the way it moves with purpose. By dawn, I drove to an old contact from my engineering days. Dr. Emily Nash, a materials scientist who used to consult for government projects. When I showed her the photo I'd snapped through the hatch window, her face drained of color. Where did you find this? Under my property. Apex Resource Group built over it. She leaned closer to the screen. That's not a resource site, Dale. That's a containment chamber. The Geological Survey sealed a similar unit in '74 after a drilling accident released magnetic plasma from deep shale layers. They called it ferroreactive matter. Do it reacts to electric current? React how? She met my eyes. It eats it, my stomach twisted. So Apex was mining it? And they were trying to harvest it. If it leaks, it'll magnetize everything around it. You won't have explosions, you'll have implosions. Metal tearing toward the source. I remembered the hum under my boots, how the ground seemed to breathe. Back in town, news broke fast. An unexplained underground vibration near Ridgeline Meadows. Residents evacuated. Apex stayed silent. But I knew what was happening. They were trying to move whatever was inside that vault. That evening, a car pulled up outside my brother's farm. Roe got out, coat half-buttoned, face pale. They filed for federal emergency clearance. Apex is claiming this is their containment system. Can they do that? He hesitated. They already have. The Department of Energy is sending a retrieval team tonight. Once they take custody, your ownership rights vanish. National Security Clause. I stared at the horizon, the distant ridge glowing faintly orange in the fading sun. They'll bury it again, I said. Roe nodded. And they'll bury you with it if you get in their way. I looked back at him. Then I won't get in their way. He frowned. Meaning? Meaning I'll go first. That night, before the federal team arrived, I drove one last time to Ridgeline Meadows. Sirens echoed in the distance. Floodlights flickered near the ridge. I parked behind the abandoned sales office and walked the final stretch on foot. When I reached the hatch, it was already open, and standing beside it, Cassandra Whitfield. Her clothes were dirty, her hair undone, but her eyes burned with the same fire as before. You shouldn't be here, she said softly. Neither should you. She glanced at the open vault. They think it's a mineral. It's not. It's energy, raw and old. Your grandfather tried to stop them decades ago. He found it first. My chest tightened. He knew? She nodded. He sealed the vault himself. Signed the report that buried it. Pex paid me to build over it. Make the land untouchable. And you agreed? I didn't know what it was until now. For a long moment we stood there, the hum growing louder beneath our feet. Then she said quietly, if that chamber ruptures, it'll swallow this whole valley. The ground trembled. A deep metallic roar rolled through the ridge. Somewhere below, the vault was waking up again. I realized then, my grandfather didn't protect the land to keep it safe. He protected everyone else from what was under it. And if Apex's team reached that chamber before me, it wouldn't just be my property on the line. It'd be the entire valley. The air above the ridge felt electric and charged, almost alive. The hum from below had grown into a deep metallic pulse that rattled the gravel under my boots. Cassandra stood beside the open hatch, staring down into the darkness. They're on their way, she said quietly. Apex's containment team. Once they seal this site under federal custody, it's gone. No one will ever know the truth. I knelt beside the hatch, shining my flashlight into the tunnel. Steam drifted up, glowing faintly blue in the light. Tell me what you know, I said. She hesitated. Then, your grandfather didn't just discover the vault, he helped build it. He was part of the geological team in '74. They drilled too deep, hit something magnetic. It reacted to light, electricity, even sound. He called it the pulse. When the first chamber cracked, it swallowed the whole rig. 3 men died before they sealed it again. My throat tightened. He never told anyone. He couldn't, she said. The government classified it. He took an oath, and when he realized Apex planned to reopen it decades later, he bought the land himself. That was the only way to keep it buried. I looked at the ridge glowing faintly against the night. He bought it to keep them out. And I almost helped them finish what he started. Cassandra's voice broke. They'll dig again. You can't stop them. I stared at the control panel beside the hatch, the rusted remains of an old fail-safe switch. A warning tag dangled from it, faded and half-burned. Manual override, permanent seal. Maybe I can, I said quietly. She realized what I meant. Dale, if you pull that, it collapses the entire shaft, I said. It'll bury the vault, for good. And you with it. The roar below deepened, the ground trembling like thunder underfoot. Apex's vans were visible on the ridge now, headlights slicing through the fog, closing fast. I turned to Cassandra. Get out of here, she shook her head. You can't do this alone. I have to, I said. He left me this land for a reason. I climbed down the ladder halfway, the heat rising like a living thing. The chamber below glowed through the mist, the swirling silver liquid now surging violently against the walls. It was like the earth itself was breathing, furious, trapped, waiting. "Dale," Cassandra's voice echoed from above. "They're almost here." I reached the switch. My hands shook, sweat stinging my eyes. Then I remembered my grandfather's words. "Don't let them take what's yours." I pulled the lever. The roar turned into a scream, metal twisting, walls shaking as the floor beneath the ridge gave way. I climbed as fast as I could, the ladder vibrating beneath me. The air exploded with dust and heat. I felt a hand grab mine. Cassandra pulling me up as the hatch slammed shut behind us. We hit the ground as the ridge erupted, sending a plume of smoke and debris into the night sky. The Apex vans skidded to a stop, their drivers stumbling out, staring at the crater where the vault once was. Cassandra turned to me, face streaked with ash. "You buried it," I nodded. "No one opens it again." For a moment there was only silence, broken by the distant rumble of collapsing earth. But 2 days later, the ground started humming again. For 2 days after the collapse, the ridge stayed quiet. No trucks, no drilling. No noise, just silence. The county declared the area unsafe, fencing it off as a geological hazard zone. Apex's lawyers vanished overnight. Cassandra disappeared too. No trace, no word. And for the first time in months, I thought it was over. Then, on the third night, the humming came back. It started faint, like a distant heartbeat under the floorboards. I thought it was in my head until the windows began to tremble. The next morning, Roe called. "Dale, you'd better see this." He sent a video recorded by a highway patrol drone. From above, the ridge looked like it was breathing, the soil lifting and falling in slow, rhythmic waves. And in the center of the crater, something faintly glowing. "The vault's gone," Roe said. "Whatever was inside, it's still alive down there." I didn't answer, because deep down, I already knew. I drove to the ridge one last time. The ground was cracked, warm under my boots. The hum was louder now, vibrating through my chest. And then, through the haze, I saw it. A silver light bleeding through the soil, like the earth itself was pulsing with energy. That's when I remembered something my grandfather once told me when I was a kid, walking through that same forest. Every place has a heartbeat. Dale, the trick is to know whether it's alive or warning you. I stepped closer, the hum growing stronger. My phone flickered, screen glitching with static. The closer I got, the lighter I felt, like gravity itself was slipping. Then I saw it, a faint outline buried beneath the dirt, the vault's lid, fractured but not destroyed. And something inside pressing upward, trying to breathe. I knelt down, hand hovering above the surface. The ground pulsed once, hard, and a whisper of air escaped from below, almost like a sigh. Then it stopped, completely. The hum faded. The soil stilled. The ridge went silent. For a long time I just stood there waiting for something, anything, to happen. But all that came was the wind, soft and hollow, carrying the smell of burned earth and rain. I turned back toward my truck, the sunrise spilling gold over the valley. For the first time it felt like the land was finally at peace. And yet, as I looked back one last time, I could have sworn, just for a moment, that the ground beneath the ridge exhaled. My grandfather had spent his life protecting this land, not for profit, not for pride, but for survival. He kept the world safe from what slept beneath it. Now it sleeps again, and I'll make sure it never wakes. This is Tomato Tales, real stories with a twist. If you've followed this journey, hit subscribe, because every story has two sides, and sometimes the truth is buried deeper than we think.